Hey folks, Tim Miller here, and I got a church security tip for you that's really important. And that's what about using force in church? Let me set this up a little bit. I've heard a lot of discussion on the internet, people saying, well, this is what I think, or this is my opinion, or this is my opinion. Folks, opinions don't matter much if in fact somebody has force used against them. It's not lawful or legal force, and the civil ramifications that follow can be devastating. Now, I'm a federal use of force certified instructor. What does that mean? Nothing much, but I've been through 2 weeks of training regarding the use of force in general, but also specific to law enforcement. But guess what? The principles all apply. So, with that said, what would you do if you're sitting in church and this
He
happens?
saw his star in the east, and we have come.
You've got a fight in your service.
Listen, stop. Now, Marcus.
Still going on, folks.
Marcus.
I wanted to address a situation. A true word, the Bible talks about in Ephesians 6 that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I was making a statement in my sermon.
And guess what, folks? The word was tested. The bottom line is that young man was someone who had grown up in the church, had serious issues with substance abuse, had been in therapy, had been in treatment, had been in inpatient therapy, but came out angry, and you saw what happened. Now, can that happen in your church, folks? It can happen this Sunday in your church. Okay, Tim, I get it, but you're talking about use of force, right? Yes, I am. I'm talking about use of force because this is a great example of we're not going to sit back and pray for him only. We're going to take deliberate, trained steps to get this thing back in order. And so let's talk about it from a couple different perspectives. If you just happen to be a deacon there, if you happen to be an average citizen and you're watching a man get beaten, can you step in and help defend him? Well, in all 50 states, there's clearly the ability under the law to defend yourself and others against imminent physical threat, to include deadly force. So in this case, is there imminent force against that man that was sitting on the front row minding his own business? Absolutely. Now let's transition to, so could an average person get involved? Absolutely. Could they help restrain him? Yes, but let me caution you. If you begin to wail on the guy's head and it's not a factual situation that requires that level of force, then you go beyond reasonable force into excessive force, and none of us want to be there. Okay, number one, the person or people standing around. Can you intervene? Absolutely. What about the security team? They're right up there. They're part of it. Maybe they're armed. I've even seen churches now that are training on intermittent weapons to include batons and pepper spray. And I just have to tell you, as a law enforcement trainer, that whole concept really kind of bugs me because I would tell our teams, and we had almost 450 safety, security, and medical personnel across all of our campuses. But I tell them every week, you're not the police and you don't play one on TV. Meaning, it's the police's job to be the police. You are not there to deploy your taser, to use a baton. And I know there are going to be some folks that are very frustrated with that because they're like, what do you want us to do? Shoot them? No, I want you to have an organized security program that's going to enable you to bring the right amount of resources right in right away. For many of your churches, that means an on-scene police officer, which means you're simply buying time until the police get there. Now, why does that matter? You're not the police if you're on a church security team as a volunteer. Most states, you have no statutory authority, zero. So you're operating under the laws of that state. Now, I understand places like Texas and South Carolina, they do give a certain amount of law enforcement authority, or detention authority, I call it, until the police get there. But make no bones about it. And let me just be as clear as I can be. If you engage physically using force, whatever kind of force it is, then you're operating under you. When the police show up, they're operating under the color of law, which means they have attorneys, they have an internal affairs organization that's going to objectively investigate it. So, folks, please, as things are getting more dangerous, please don't feel like you have to be the one that goes and now you're fisticuffing and you're fighting. I'm not saying, hear me loud, please hear me loud. I'm not saying don't defend people. I am saying don't escalate, don't go to force. I recently watched a sanctuary take over in a very, very large church, and I watched one of their security team members slap a camera out of a person's hand that was part of the group, and then grab that person and escort him out with force. Well, folks, in the state of Florida, that's assault. We don't have the authority to grab people, put our hands, act like the police. You know why? Because we're not the police. So when you begin thinking through your use of force options as parallel to the police, which is why I get a little concerned when I hear about duty belts and intermittent weapons. And I think, folks, that can be a very dangerous pathway to move down, especially if you're looking at it through the lens of ministry. Now, as we train all over the country, everybody's heard me say that. I hope and pray that I and all of our fellow security ministry members have the heart and the skills of David, meaning we love God with all our heart. We're a man or woman after God's own heart, but we can pull a sword if we have to. But when it comes to use of force, folks, and I hear this on the internet, be careful. Do not assume that you have authority that you do not have, because what may end up happening if you cross the line into illegal use of force, you could be the one going to jail. So let me wrap it up just very, very succinctly when it comes to using force in the church. Everybody that's listening to me, everybody needs to read line by line your state law on self-defense. They're very different. In some states in the north, you have a duty to retreat. Well, but I'm a church. No, it doesn't matter. If there's something going on and you can get away from it, then you have a duty to retreat. Is that a problem? It's a huge problem. In other states, Florida, you have a stand your ground law, meaning if you're doing something legally, doesn't matter, it doesn't apply if it's illegal, but if you're doing something legally and the facts in front of you communicate to you that someone's an imminent, immediate threat to yourself or others, you don't have to run. You can do what is reasonable under those circumstances. And so it becomes all about you training in advance, especially mental. That's where when I'm training officers, we've got to go down the highway of what's the law say I can do? What do the facts under a case called Graham versus Connor, U.S. Supreme Court a case that outlines when officers can use force. And so what's the law? What's the facts? And then based on the law and the facts, what's reasonable? Folks, a lot of cops spend a lot of time in jail because they had the law, they had the ability to use force, they saw the facts in front of them, but they were way excessive. And folks, that can happen to you and I, especially if you're not trained through a 6-9 month academy, that kind of stuff. So hear my heart. I'm hoping and praying that everybody on your team is training, that you are really focusing on the things that matter: de-escalation, mental health awareness, how to do ministry with hurting people, how do you bring down a domestic situation. Folks, those are the 99.9% of the things you're going to deal with. But every now and then, you're going to have to use force. And the only thing I'm going to challenge you as I finish up is you better be careful, you better be legal, and you better be tactically trained to use that force. What does that mean? It means that, again, I'm hearing terms like duty belts for volunteer church security teams. I'm hearing, oh, well, we have tasers. I don't carry a taser. Will never carry a taser. An intermediate weapon of some kind. I'm not opposed to pepper spray, some kind of ass baton. But even then, folks, I've been on the scene of hundreds of people sprayed with pepper spray. It's a problem because it causes everybody around you to get affected by that too. If you're going to use a baton in the Secret Service, we had to be certified regularly with that baton. You know why? One blow, wrong place, and it could even be accidental, can kill someone. We've had situations where we're in violent struggles and a suspect or a person will dip their head and now you got a head blow. Not good. So let me encourage you. The use of force is a very tricky subject. And I would really encourage you to ask your pastoral leadership, what do you think about us using force? One of the common misconceptions is that if somebody disrupts your service, you can grab them and pull them out of the service. Not last time I checked, not in any state I know. You can certainly, touch and say, hey, sir, ma'am, could you please come outside with me? In the protest situations, when the ushers confronted because they were trained, the people complied. And they did lightly, there's a difference between grabbing and pulling and lightly escorting them out. So, folks, I hope this is helpful. I really, really would love your comments on this because this is a big topic, using force in church. Obviously, when we get into the guns and actual shots fired in a congregation, wow, that's a whole different level because you really don't have a choice at that point. The facts, you may have to pull your weapon, you may have to do it, but I will tell you this. The tactics of your sanctuary security team is the difference between people living or dying in that sanctuary, especially if you're at a larger church. I recently did a security assessment for a very large church. I asked them about their sanctuary tactics, and it's ad hoc. It's, maybe we have somebody here, maybe we have somebody there. That's a problem. I want you to think, if you're a police officer, I want you to think about making a tactical entry where everybody goes, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Formula for disaster. So I hope this is helpful. Security tip for use of force. Folks, this is coming. We're going to have to be better at this in our churches. Jesus said in the last days, there will be very violent times. Interestingly enough, the word for violence in Hebrew is Hamas. Think about it. I hope and pray that your churches are safe. I hope your security ministry is prayed up, prepared, and trained, because in the days ahead, it's going to be important that the gospel goes out without hindrance. God bless you. Love you guys, and look forward to seeing you next time.